Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Happy Labor Day, preschool peeps.
Happy Labor Day. Ooh, day off.
I briefly, Allison, for a moment there, thought maybe we won't release an episode on Labor Day. And then we started to get feedback from schools that have opened.
Yeah, I had that.
And that was pretty much the end of that.
That was it. Yep.
That was pretty much the end.
It's been a week.
Yeah, so some schools have started to open, and some preschools have started to reopen that weren't open already. And Allison was telling some of the things that she's heard, and I was telling Allison some of the things that I heard, and they were amazingly similar. So we thought we should do an episode talking about this notion of, are we setting children up for success not only now during the pandemic as schools reopen, but also for their future, because some of the messages that children are getting about returning to educational and or childcare settings are interesting messages. I understand where they're coming from, but we have to think about the future. Allison and I decided we wanted to start off this episode with a little disclaimer to set the tone. And that's basically this. This episode is not a commentary on anybody's political opinions. It is not a commentary on anybody's personal decisions. It is a commentary on what helps children to succeed, the way that we approach things, because that's the work that Allison and I do on this podcast.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that any comments that we get about this might be civil and respectful of each other. I'm not talking about just us, but of all listeners.
Everyone, yes.
Who come to this podcast with all their own viewpoints. But I think no matter what viewpoint you're coming from, I'm hoping you can agree that what we want to do as parents and as teachers is help to set children up for their success today and in the future.
Yes.
Did I do it, Allison? How was that?
You did it. Awesome.
Okay. So there are two messages that seem to be coming at me from a variety of people, so it's not just in one location that children are getting these messages. These messages are being sent to children in many different places, and we have to address them. They basically fall into two categories.
Yeah.
One category is you're going back or you're going to childcare or school. Don't touch anything. Don't go near anything.
Yeah.
Don't
play with people. Don't mix with people. Don't keep your distance at all times. Which, yes, you need to keep your distance. You need to keep your 6 feet. But when you say it that way and the child doesn't quite understand what that means, you have children coming to school and they see a group of people, they get anxiety because they're like, well, I can't be there. I can't go through that door because there's too many people there. And it gives them this panic, this anxiety that does not need to be there.
And it's not even the case everywhere that the children can't be near each other.
Right.
In some of the states that I work with, if you are in your static group, they actually can play in small groups together. They don't need to be 6 feet apart, especially if they're wearing masks or whatever. They don't need to be 6 feet apart in every location. But you're right, that's causing a lot of anxiety. And let's just introduce the second statement that I have now heard multiple times, Allison, and that is basically this. Don't worry about the COVID rules. You don't have to wear your mask like they're telling you. Take it off whenever you're uncomfortable. If you want to be near people, you just do it. You won't be in trouble with us. And it reminds me of a message that I got some of us got when we were kids, that if someone was picking on you, you defend yourself, and maybe you'll get sent to the principal's office, but you won't be in trouble with your parents because you defended yourself. That was a common message in past generations, right?
Right.
But we were talking then about a kid picking on you or something. We were not talking about a disease that children can bring home and give to their parents, their grandparents, whatever. So And we were talking about defending yourself against someone being mean. And today we're talking about rules that have been put into place by the larger institution, the state and the government.
And the Department of Health. Yeah.
And the Department of Health. And some children are getting the message to ignore that. And I have to worry about the impact that that's going to have on them in the future when, let's face it, they're not going to be young children in school forever. They're going to grow. They're going to keep going to school. They may go to trade school or college. Then hopefully they will have a job. And you can't just decide in a job you're not following the rules. And you have to know that your parents are not coming to defend you at that job because you didn't follow the rules. But when we get messages in early childhood about how we handle things like rules and socialization, those messages stay inside us and affect how we operate for our whole lives.
Yeah.
So I understand, how about this? I understand where both messages are coming from. I understand that the first message is coming from parents' fears and worry, anxiety for their children and their own health. I understand that they're worried about their children getting sick and that they feel like they can't necessarily trust all the families around them. Totally get it.
Totally get that. I also feel like that the first statement might be sometimes just preparing the child for what school will be like.
Could be.
But doing it in a way that it's almost like like you want to prepare them like, hey, you know what? You're going to have a desk this year instead of being able to sit on the floor in groups and like things like that. But then like sometimes those statements, the child doesn't quite understand it yet because they're not in school, so like they're taking it a different way and it's just building all these questions in their mind and they don't, and then they just kind of get too nervous about it, or they don't know how to do it. And they interpret
that as like, don't touch the tables. Like, don't you were sitting them at a desk and someone told me about a child who just started crying and she was like, what's wrong? Are you okay? And he said, my mommy said I can't touch anything. I can't put my hands on the desk. Children take what we as adults feel are small statements and they become huge.
Yes. Yeah, that it happened this week at my school. A boy got very upset. You think it's the first day of school, nervousness, and you talk to him and he's like, I'm not allowed to be by you. I'm not allowed to be by you. And you're like, well, that's not the case. We can still talk to each other. I can't touch or hug you, but we could still have a conversation. And he was just so worried about it that he just kind of shut down in the beginning of the day. And it was just so sad. And then I think as the day went on, he realized like, oh wait, I can kind of have conversations even though I'm at a desk and I can make friends. And he did. And by the end of the day, he was fine. But I think in his head, he's like, I don't know what that means exactly. Right. Like my mommy said, don't go by people. So now here I am in a room with 8 other people, and I shouldn't be here. And it's hard. It's hard for them to understand.
I think that a piece of advice about that, and again, I get it, but I think a piece of advice is a piece of advice that we use usually when we're talking to children about their behavior, and that's to tell them what they can do versus what they cannot do.
Right.
So like you told that child, no, you can. We may have to be a little apart, but you can talk to me and you can be in the room with me and you can. And I think that for the children, we need to tell them, here's what you can do. You can still talk to your teacher. You can still talk to the other children. I've been doing professional development this week and I have a poll question in the beginning of my Zoom sessions. And it says, how do you picture this year? And I give them options like quiet or loud, peaceful or chaotic, like what are you picturing from the viewpoint of teachers? And honestly, I'm surprised that I'm getting a variety of responses. Some schools say I picture chaos. Other schools say I picture quiet. And I told them, I think you're picturing quiet because you and the kids are behind masks maybe, and you're staying somewhat apart. But you're in the same room. I think they're going to be shouting to each other. I think they're going to be shouting to you.
Trust me. Yeah.
Like, I think they're going to be yelling to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's kind of like in early childhood how we say to the children everything very positively. We always try to be like, instead of saying don't run, we say please walk in the hallway, or like don't scream. We always say, you know, speak quieter. And kind of how with these COVID regulations is, instead of being like don't even talk to your teacher kind of thing, or don't go, you can't be in a group and whatever. Instead of be like, no, you're going to go to school and you will have conversations. You're just going to keep your distance. Here's how you keep your distance, you know, or like whatever it may be, and spin it positively, which is what we always try to do with the children anyway. But
you momentarily, your face froze there, just so you know. I could still hear you though.
It's also really dark.
You're all right. We'll keep talking. Don't worry. We'll talk fast. Okay. So there's that. So try and tell the children and check with the school. Try and tell the children what they can do. Now, the other message that I've heard from more than one location, if you're on YouTube, I'm sorry for whatever Allison's trying to do to illuminate her face. Okay. The other message.
Get up and turn the light on.
The other message that children are getting.
Yeah, go on.
You there? You're freezing. You're not freezing. I don't know. Okay. So the other message.
Not good this week. Yeah.
The other message that children are getting, this message about don't follow the rules. I understand where that's coming from too. There are people who are very concerned about their children wearing masks. There are people who are concerned about 6 hours in a mask. I get it. I would be too. There are people who are just feeling so out of control that they're trying to control something. So they're saying to their children, here, do this and I won't care. Like, I'm going to still control your whatever, right? Like, I get the reasons why people are deciding this. They think it's too much for their children. They think it's too much for them. They're trying to protect their children. Totally get it. Here's the problem. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, telling children not to follow important rules gives them the wrong message about how to succeed in their society now and in the future. Period. The end.
Period. The end. They need to know how to function in society. Period.
Right. Okay. So can we just put the pandemic aside for a second and remember that this situation is going to morph and change, but your children are going to grow up in a world where they still are going to have to be responsible, function in society, hold down jobs. You're not setting them up for success if you tell them that. And I know that it's hard. I know. What you can tell them is, if the mask is bothering you, please let your teacher know and have them call me. If the mask is bothering you, ask to go to the office and I'll come and pick you up. How about that?
There you go.
Right? Here's what we're going to do. I don't want you to have to wear the mask all day. So when it's bothering you, tell your teacher that they need to call me. Something like that. And then it becomes your decision again. But it's not the child breaking rules. Come up with a way where the child is not being put in the position of being torn between what you've told them and what the school is telling them. That is unfair.
Right.
Also,
it's okay for your child to communicate that to me as their teacher. My mask is bothering me. Okay, now I know. Here's some of the options that I can go through to help him become more comfortable. You know, maybe I can take the class. Yeah, you know, but if I don't know that, I can't help. So,
we can't help you if you don't tell us what's going on.
If you don't tell us, I don't know. You know, but if you teach your child, it's okay for you to communicate that to your teacher. Then there's a lot of things that I could go through my mind and try to fix that problem. And then if it's still uncomfortable, then you can go be like, okay, I will email or call your mom. That's in the protocol that your mom said I can do. Great. I will do that. You know, I mean, like, figure that out. But to sit there and say, you don't have to follow this mask rule when it's a state law, at least here, you know, you're setting them up to be like, well, now I never have to follow rules because, and then they're not going to know how to function when they're older. Yeah.
My parents are just going to come and say that it's okay that I don't do whatever people say to me. Children take small statements and blow them up into big things.
Big things.
Right?
Yes.
They extend it beyond what you meant. Also, one final thing before Allison, who's sitting now where it's getting dark and beyond her control. One final note for you all. Yeah. Wearing masks, even if your child can't stay in it all day and you have to go pick them up, staying socially distant from people when it's required, even though it's not the ideal for children. By telling them to adhere to these rules, We are, in fact, teaching them to have compassion and caring for other people. That's why we're wearing masks, because of the other people.
We're doing it.
That's why we're staying socially distant, because of the other people. So I just kind of beg you to sit and think about what is it that you want to teach your children as a baseline of their values going forward. Do you want to teach them that we do care about rules and other people and society? I know that this pandemic and how it has played out has caused a lot of people to feel disengaged, unhappy, rebellious. I get it, but you're adults and they are not. And they are not taking this information in the way you think that they are.
Yeah. I mean, the goal, I would think, is that you want your child to grow up to be a kind and caring and compassionate person. You know, so set them up to be that person.
Because they're going to take your statements about this and apply it to everything, and it stays with them, just like the anxiety in the first situation becomes a part of who they are. So Alison and I are just going to ask everybody this. Before giving directives to your children, think about how they may interpret that. And teachers, because I know you're listening and you're sitting there now going, yeah, that happened in my classroom.
Oh, yeah.
Our job is always to educate not just the children, but the families. If you need to talk to families about this sort of thing, please do it from the perspective of families have good intentions and I need to educate you about what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. So Alison, who's sitting in a dark area without a light right now. Alison, quick, wrap us up before we can't see you so everybody could go and enjoy the rest of their Labor Day.
Rate us 5 stars. That would be awesome, because we are awesome. Go to our website, howpreschoolteachersdoit.com, if you want to contact us or make a comment about our episodes. We love to hear from people. Also, you can send us a question, because I think we're like 8 episodes away from our 100th episode. Okay. Send us our questions there. You can also find us on Facebook at How Preschool Teachers Do It podcast. And did I get that all?
I think you did.
I'm doing
if
well.
Not, who knows? If not, who knows?
Yeah.
Okay,
Can't
folks.
See me anyway.
I hope you are having or have had a wonderful Labor Day.
Yes.
Deep breath, and everybody moves to the future, moves forward. We'll catch you next time on the podcast.
Bye.